Good morning. My name is James Baroud, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the 2008 Innovation Summit. As many of you know, we've been doing these innovation programs, all intended to share best practices and help you at your workplace implement and sustain innovation. Before I introduce a big supporter of ours here at the college, I just want to mention our team. I want to thank them. I'd also like to thank our sponsors who make this program possible. Not only this program, but all of our outreach programs. Over the almost 20 years that we've been in existence, it's been this collaboration that's made us one of the best entrepreneurship centers in the country. Furthermore, it's this collaboration, especially with our innovation programs, that's made us really at the top of the class. You know, usually I say outside of Stanford, we're doing great things. But I've just been benchmarking them, and I think, you know, when we look at all of our programs, from these conferences to executive training, to roundtables, to lectures, to iSpace, creative facilitation, to even now a TV show, there is no one else who's doing what we're doing at this point. So I'd like to thank our Dean, William Moore, for his support in all we do, and ask him to come up and introduce our speaker, Ed Ludwig.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see all of you here this morning. On behalf of our president, J. Michael Adams, who could not be with us this morning, I would like to welcome all of you to our campus. For some of you, you are returnees to our campus, and for some, first time. For all of you, please, this is a beautiful day, so when you get a moment, take the opportunity to walk around our campus and you get to see more of who we are. And of course, enjoy the mansion. It's hard to believe that only one family lived here, and a couple of months out of the year. And I think the train stopped here at the mansion, so they didn't have to go to board the train. So let that be a lesson to you, that when you build your mansion, make sure the train stops there at your mansion. You probably noticed as you drove here that you saw banners up which said Leader in Global Education for Fairleigh Dickinson University. We're pretty proud of that. And as you look globally, you'll find innovation and entrepreneurship taking hold. And so we're pleased to include entrepreneurship and innovation in our educational programs here, as well as for our students and for our various stakeholders. So we're pleased to sponsor this summit this morning as well. So welcome again, and I hope that you come back many more times. At this summit devoted to innovation, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a true innovator and a tremendous leader, Edward J. Ludwig. Ed is the chairman of the board, president and chief executive officer of BD, Becton, Dickinson and Company, a global medical technology company headquartered in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. Founded in 1897, BD has been an innovative medical technology leader for 111 years. It has been innovating, adapting, and adopting technologies to address healthcare needs globally. I'm also pleased to note that the company has enjoyed a close and unique relationship with our university. Both FDU and BD were founded in large part through the entrepreneurial spirit of Colonel Fairleigh S. Dickinson, who began as a traveling paper salesman in North Carolina. He met another fellow from North Carolina, Maxwell Becton, and the two launched a medical technology firm that would be the envy of the industry. Mr. Ludwig joined BD in 1979 as a senior financial analyst and earned promotions to prominent levels of responsibility. He was named Chief Financial Officer in 1995, President in 1999, Chief Executive Officer in 2000, and was elected Chairman in 2002. 2. Prior to joining BD, Mr. Ludwig was a senior auditor with Coopers & Lybrand and as a financial analyst and strategic analyst at Kitty Incorporated. He's active in several philanthropic efforts and sits on several nonprofit boards, as well as the corporate boards of AdvaMed and Aetna Insurance. Please join me in welcoming Ed Ludwig. Ed?
Thank you very much, Dean Moore. And it's great to be here. It's great to be here. Let's just get right into it here. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about innovation. I will caution you in advance, this is not a lecture. I would not deem to lecture anyone about innovation. I think that's a very dangerous thing. But we'll tinker with some ideas, and I'll give you some examples. I'll elaborate a little bit about what Dean Moore said. We, Becton Dickinson, and we, Fairleigh Dickinson University, do have a name in common, and I believe we have some themes in common. Talk about some innovation themes and innovation at BD. As I said, this is not a lecture. I'm going to be sharing, I feel a little bit like a combination of Columbo, Monk, and Sherlock Holmes, because I've become, as you know, I've been at the company now almost 30 years, and I've become sort of the company historian. So if you keep telling the story of the company over and over again, it's like looking at a crime scene over and over again, and you start to develop some clues and patterns, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. A couple of just sound bites using other very successful people talking about this. Obviously, this is about change and adaptation, adoption. We adopt and adapt. Obviously, we are 111 years old, but it's not about doing what we did yesterday. I think stealing some ideas from Jim Collins, as I will throughout the morning, you know, he would subscribe to the notion that you have to preserve your core values and your purpose while everything else about you changes in response to a changing environment. I was sitting home last night watching two of my favorite teams lose, and I was distracted. I didn't want to watch that, so I was reading the paper, and there's a very big transaction going on right now between Wrigley and Mars. And it was interesting to note, in 1891, Bill Wrigley moved to Chicago and started selling soap. He then went from selling soap to selling baking soda and baking powder. And in order to induce shopkeepers to buy his baking powder, he gave them chewing gum. And so it's not the Wrigley Baking Powder Company today. He adopted and adapted and became the world leader in chewing gum. But you never know where you're going to end up depending on where you start. A little bit about BD. We are a Fortune 500 company. We're ranked 380th in revenue, and we're very proud that we're also ranked 83rd in total return to shareholders over the last 10 years. We're global. 52% of our revenue comes from outside the United States, and we have been global ever since our founding. I'll talk about that in a second. We have 28,000 employees, and we have our focus is basically human health, and we're basically working in all those areas. As Dean Moore said, these are our founders. They met by accident in a train station. One of the fellows was selling medical supplies. The other fellow was selling office supplies. I don't know how they decided medical supplies, but I, for one, am very happy that they did. They immediately put their name on the door and started focusing on quality. As Dean Moore said, they met, as tradition has it, in this train station where one was having breakfast and the other came in. The sun was in his eyes, closed the shade as a courtesy, and they started talking. Also, as you noted, Colonel Dickinson, as he later became known as a result of having served in the reserve, in 1941 worked with Peter San Martino to create this college, this university. It was incorporated 64 years ago on May 14th. 3 of the 5 first incorporators were BD people, including Colonel Dickinson. And I would submit that, anyway, the other thing is that those of you who are in the development world here, he gave Mr. San Martino $30,000 match. He had Pete had raised $30,000 and needed another 30. So for the princely sum of $30,000, he got the whole place named after himself. I don't know that you'd get a doorknob today for that, but I would submit that Fairleigh Dickinson has been an innovator and continues to be an innovator in education, including global education, particularly in this field that we're working on today. Some themes that I have observed over the years in observing how we evolve as a company. Many times we have been the first to market. Many times as I go through the product history, the product sometimes even precedes the ubiquitous need for that product, and that's a hallmark. But then you have to focus. So the first product is just that, the first product. The first Vacutainer was invented in 1954, and we continue to innovate even up to today. And I would submit that it's also beyond products. It's not just about the product. You need to have the product. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So the way you go to market, the way you employ manufacturing processes, business processes, leadership development, I'll touch upon these very, very briefly. And again, and it is beyond breakthroughs. Many of our innovations are small, almost unnoticeable increments of value and capability for customers. It is not local, it is global, so you have to look everywhere for your ideas. And you have to get beyond the not invented here. So that includes licensing, partnerships, and acquisitions. And as I said, I'd like to present this as a hypothesis and leave a fair amount of room for discussion. Some of the early products and today the current products that make up for a lot of our business are syringes. So you have to think back to 1900 when syringes were first being made and sold. There weren't a lot of drugs to be injected. Early on, the company focused on innovation. They were quick to patent. They were very proud to have their names on many patents. The other thing they did within 10 years of founding, they said if we're going to have our name on the product and if we're going to say we are basically about quality, we're going to make the product ourselves. And so this was a plant that was in operation really until about 15 years ago in Rutherford. So within the first 10 years we were manufacturing, and manufacturing excellence has been and will continue to be core to our innovation. So it's not just a matter of the product, it's getting it to market effectively with very high quality because it's a medical product and at very low cost so that it can be afforded. Early on this was a product that was imported from Germany. The company again very cleverly said, what are we going to call this product? So we had a contest and a number of doctors, 48, came up with the same name, so they all got the same $5 or $10, whatever the princely prize was. And they said, let's call it the all-cotton elastic, and that's why we now have Ace bandages. 1925, the company, again, brought its technology to the marketplace. This is a medical convention in Atlantic City where they're actually showing the doctors how the product works. This is a patent that was actually held by Colonel Dickinson. So again, the founders, the entrepreneurs, very much hands-on, very much focused on what they were doing. This is 1924. This is a kit that was used in 1924 for the first self-injection of a drug called insulin. It had just been invented by a couple of Canadian doctors who had discovered. It was a response to what was until then a fatal disease, diabetes. And we produced, in response to that very rapidly, injection went from something happening in doctors' offices to something happening in the home, and we evolved in that manner. So this, again, is the evolution of insulin injection devices for people with diabetes, starting with the basic syringes. The top left one required to be re-sterilized and re-sharpened, and to the point now where we have pen needles, very, very exquisitely fine needles, which have the feature of having very, very positive comfort for folks who have to inject themselves multiple times a day. So again, from 1924 right up until the current time, continuing to evolve. Early syringes were made out of glass. This is a 1940s version of a syringe kit. One of the real breakthroughs was the opportunity. Syringes used to be made as one unit, where the barrel and the plunger were made as a unit. You know, a breakthrough, a big deal in those days was to have a whole series of barrels and a whole series of plungers which were interchangeable. This is an early diagnostic kit allowing doctors to draw blood directly into a tube. Again, you have to go back and think about how many analytical diagnostic systems were on the market in the 1950s. Not too many. There weren't too many reasons to draw blood. And a fellow named Joe Kleiner, who was the An employee at Becton Dickinson said, well, instead of aspirating blood with a syringe, why don't we create a tube that has a vacuum in it, put a capper on the vacuum, and do a multi-sample situation like that. And he was so enamored of his own invention that he went around the country getting himself stuck and drawing blood. He probably died of anemia. But this was Joe. He believed in his product, so he went out on the road, and he's giving demonstrations. But again, if you think about the need for drawing blood in 1955, 56, 57, there wasn't a lot of needs. I mean, the culture counter, the immunodiagnostics, the modern chemistry was really not yet there. So the vacutainer has also evolved over time. Multi-sample needle. Back about 20 years ago, we began imbuing our products with safety features, because one of the things we found over time is that as you use these products and they're associated with blood and they are sharp, there is a chance for accidental needle sticks. The company founded in New Jersey, actually founded in New York, moved quickly to New Jersey, moved outside of New Jersey in 1949. First plant outside of New Jersey. This was in Columbus, Nebraska. Made syringes. In 1953, Dr. Jonas Salk discovered a vaccine to again address an extraordinary medical problem in those days, polio. And within very short order, BD produced the first 1 million syringes used for the polio vaccination program. This is, again, the advent in the 50s of disposable products. Up till this point, products had to be re-sterilized and reprocessed. And this, again, dates back to 52. This is a series of vaccine products. The basic syringe. This is a smallpox vaccination. Again, smallpox still a problem in certain parts of the world, but by and large eradicated as a result of vaccination programs. These products at the lower part of the page here are products that once used cannot be reused. Problem in many vaccination programs today, particularly in the developing world, is the products are being reused inappropriately, and instead of helping people, they're spreading hepatitis and other problems. So we have products that once used cannot be reused, and they are now the standard for vaccination programs all over the world. Again, in the 50s, the company made a significant departure from its core purpose of, by then, primarily drug delivery products and blood collection products. So up till the mid-50s, the solid branch of the tree was really a syringe, a special syringe for diabetes, a special purpose device for extracting blood, etc. We made this excursion by buying, again, going outside the core, the Baltimore Biological Laboratories. This is Dr. Karski in the upper left-hand corner. And through an acquisition, we got into the infectious disease diagnostics business. We acquired another company in 1979 that did automated blood culturing, which is shown here. And today we have a molecular diagnostic test. So the tests first bought by the Karskis took a matter of days and sometimes weeks, whereas the BD Viper system can get you an answer on some very sophisticated problems within a matter of minutes and hours. Again, another breakthrough in the company's history. Again, we're about halfway through the timeline here. These folks started making sterile single-use products. The fellow on the left is a guy named Jack Howe, who was the first non-family CEO. He was an engineer, graduate of Stevens Tech here in New Jersey. And these guys are making the first disposable single-use plastic metal needle syringe. And again, today we can sell these products for a matter of pennies in real dollars. And so, but it has evolved. But this goes back to the 50s. In 1962, again, up till 1962, the company was owned by the family. 1962, they needed another form of innovation. Today, it's almost second nature. You run the business for a little while and then you go public. In those days, it took them whatever it was, almost 70 years to go public, so they were very patient. We went public in '62 basically to finance the building of all of the molds and assembly equipment that we were going to need to produce these high-volume disposable products. About 10 years later, we opened in one of the first residents of the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, where today we are the largest patent holder of all the research firms in that park. Very early on, these posters go back to the 50s and 60s, there was an awareness that we're dealing with infectious products. We have sharp products which can transmit disease. And so these are black and whites that go back a good 50, 60 years. We really dialed up the sound on this about 20 years ago. And here again was an answer for which there was not yet a question. About 20 years ago, we began to really dial up the issue of healthcare worker safety and accidental needle sticks. And chances are, if you walked into most hospitals 20, 25 years ago and said, "We're here to help you solve your accidental needle stick problem," the hospital administrator and maybe even the head of nursing would say, "We don't have a problem." So these are destruction devices. Years ago, used to clip the needle. Then we found that that wasn't good because it creates an aerosol. So now we have these other devices that are used. You see them in doctors' offices for disposing of the product appropriately. I mean, the holy grail, obviously, is to have something that's biodegradable. We're still working on that, so there's still a fair amount of opportunity here, we believe, to continue to add value. These are some examples of ways that you can make that needle harmless, disappear, so it can't inadvertently stick someone. In 1985, we acquired the Deseret Catheter Company, which is another form of sharp. We do make 28 billion needles a year that go into all these various devices. As a kid, I hated needles. I had to be restrained to get my polio shot, so go figure. Another major excursion on the part of the company occurred in the 70s when we got into cell analysis, cellular analysis. Now, this doesn't look anything like a syringe. These two mad scientist-looking guys were the first inventors of a system that allows us to interrogate cells at a rate of tens of thousands of cells per second. And it helps researchers look at those cells, principally white cells in the immune system, to understand how the system is working or not working. They're used today to do tests for AIDS, to diagnose AIDS, and to tell if someone's immune system has reached the stage where they could benefit from antiretroviral therapy. Top left, early fax system. This is a laser-based, very sophisticated. The one on the bottom right, again, the innovation here is it's basically plug and play. You know, the top left required extraordinary skill. The bottom right still requires skill, but it's more like your laptop than it was like, you know, inventing a computer 20 or 30 years ago. And now we're actually, the bottom left is a picture of how cells communicate. These are all various receptors on a cell, and we now have, through an acquisition, a cell imaging system, so we can actually watch cells communicate, send messages to other cells as they're either trying to do something good or something bad, and then we can understand how that works and either accelerate it if it's good or retard it if it's bad. So much for the products. Just a couple of more ideas here about other innovations we have had to adjust to. So if you take the last business I talked about, we sell a catalog of tens of thousands of discrete products to researchers who number in the hundreds of thousands. So if you take that combination of a catalog of tens of thousands and discrete researchers, most of whom are sitting in front of a computer through some part of their day, it opens the opportunity for internet-based exchange. And so now we have in a number of our businesses, and soon to all of them, a very sophisticated interaction between our customers and the products we sell through a thing that we call Product Neuron. We have also, throughout our history, dating back to 1907, understood very clearly that unlike a pharmaceutical company or a traditional pharmaceutical company, which was really focused on research, and once you had the compound, manufacturing in the old sort of the traditional pharmaceutical companies, manufacturing was a fairly non-value adding process. Once you invented something, manufacturing it was pretty basic. Not so today with the advanced biopharmaceuticals. But with us, we have always had to be able to make billions of things very high quality because they're interacting with human health at a very low cost because we want to make them ubiquitous and available. So we have used Six Sigma, we have used Lean, process validation. We have also implemented, we're in our second phase implementation of a global ERP environment using SAP. And so if you want to talk about that, I've got all the scars from that. We got through it, it's okay. But I do think it has made us a better company. The bottom right is a picture of one of our distribution facilities. So again, innovation doesn't stop at the product. You've got to get it into the customer's hands. So this is a facility we opened in Plainfield, Indiana. It's 600,000 square feet. It is completely automated through RF wanding. Our inventory accuracy here, I'm a CPA by training, our inventory accuracy in that plant is 99.98 accurate. We don't do year-end physicals, we do cycle counts. We have extraordinary service, and we're able to get about 70% of our product shipped next day to the customer, even though that exceeds their expectation. Over the last 15 years, we have subscribed, with the help of some of our internal thought leaders in this area, to a notion that we call leaders as teachers. We have a virtual university. Yes, we send students to Fairleigh, Dickinson, and other great institutions around here for their advanced degrees, their MBAs. We pay for that. We provide support for that. But we have our own internal, particularly focusing on our system of management, the BD way of how leaders are supposed to behave, imbuing them with our values, and our leaders teach in the programs, and so we don't hire outside teachers. We do on occasion for special content, but for the most part we teach, we teach our own people our own way. Again, acquisitions, we have made acquisitions. These are not by modern standards large mergers of equals kinds of things. We will acquire companies where we have discovered that they know how to do something or have achieved a certain competency that we would take a lot longer to do. The one a couple of years ago was a company called Genome. We're now one of the 2 leaders in screening for healthcare-associated infections, which is a horrible problem facing everyone in this country, probably causing tens of billions of dollars of healthcare costs with drug-resistant bacteria. With a simple nasal swab, we can detect this in about 2 hours and then deal with that patient, make sure that they're not giving it to someone else. And then about a year and a half ago, we acquired the TriPath company, which has some breakthrough capabilities in cancer diagnostics. These are, the left slide down here is an old type of Pap slide, and you're looking for the red stuff, the stuff that is stained and might have some abnormality about it. I think we would all agree that the right one is easier to detect the red stuff than the left side. So again, it's simpler, it's easier, faster detection makes better therapy. We've had a very good run with the stock since the 80s. And in the last several years, we have outperformed both the S&P 500 and our peer group. I think that's the reward. We don't do it for this. This is the reward that we get for that. And, we're very excited about it. So, again, I hope I've provided you with a couple of ideas, and maybe we want to follow up and talk about. This is not, innovation is not mechanical. It's not easy. I do believe it can be learned and taught. I think that from one generation to the next, you can improve upon the process. I think you can learn from your history, but always build for the future as well. So what's important to preserve is our core. We would describe ourselves as having a purpose of helping people live healthy lives. We believe that purpose has been there from the founding in 1897. We do that by applying and adopting technology, adopt and adapt, I like to say, to solve problems that maybe other people haven't even noticed. It's an accidental needle stick. It's an emerging problem. It's something that's not quite obvious to the rest of the world. And by being first, we think we can add real value and be leaders. So this is kind of the summary. I'm happy to engage in some questions.
Ed, when BD purchases a smaller, innovative company, do you tend to immediately absorb that company into the BD culture, or do you tend to let it live and breathe a life of its own to continue that innovative spirit?
Yeah, virtually every one of our acquisitions over the last at least 10 or 15 years, the company has stayed on its own. In fact, we go out of our way to provide incentives, and many times it's not the financial incentives. I mean, because many times we buy the company from the person who runs it and owns it, and so they're walking away with a fair amount of money in their pocket. But what we found is that it's the financial incentives, yes, but it's their ability to stay and continue to do what they love to do. And maybe within the context of a larger company, so they don't have to worry about, hand-to-mouth bill paying and all the other stuff. They can go back to being sort of the inventor and the scientific content person. So we have been very successful, I think, in the last 5 or 10 acquisitions, at least, that we've retained the top team by design. We've retained their physical location. These companies in here in particular are where they were when we bought them. But that what we bring to the party, case in point, the TriPath company was a public company. and they had had a series of disappointments with respect to FDA clearance on some of their products. They were late, they weren't quite. And so what we did, first of all, we infused the whole group of our best and hired a few outstanding regulatory professionals so that we took what they did well and added to it what we do well. So we very much believe, particularly with medium, small size strategic fold-ins, that the company should retain its identity. And then we provide it with all of the systematic help and support. But it's very important that you could go in and hug these little guys to death if you don't watch out.
In my job, I look at a lot of disruptive innovations, and disruptive innovations in diagnostics are one of the most intriguing areas, but also one of the most problematic areas I've seen. So to give you an example, I'd be interested in how you think about this sort of innovation. I was talking with a small biotech firm yesterday that has a diagnostic for a degenerative musculoskeletal condition, which would be administered in sort of the adolescent years, and would allow for early, less invasive therapies than dramatically invasive surgery once a person gets into their 20s or 30s. The problem is that payers just aren't interested in that sort of thing. So I'm wondering, does our healthcare system today preclude those sort of preventative diagnostics that have a longer time frame, which ultimately lower systemic costs? And if so, what do you do as a company partly in the diagnostic space to create that market?
Yeah, it's a great example. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the clinical trial that would be needed to take that product through its logical conclusion. It would be problematic. Our products are a little bit more immediate in their benefit. I spend, as I think Dean Moore just mentioned, I spent the last 2 years as the chair of our trade association, AdvaMed. And so in addition to my day job, I thought it was very important to be involved on an industry level. And in the last 2 years, I spent a fair amount of my time directly negotiating with FDA for improved resources. We now have imposed user fees on ourselves in the medical technology industry. User fees have been in the pharmaceutical field for a number of years, so that we have an effective, competent, highly skilled FDA. We know that that is many times the gate between us and the marketplace. We also know that many of our products are sold 2 or 3 years earlier in Europe than they are here because their regulatory process in Europe is frankly a lot more streamlined and transparent than ours. It also revolves around a process of quality and regulation as opposed to an episodic one, and they've normalized it throughout Europe through the CE mark. The other part of challenge with all of these products is reimbursement, and so we do a fair amount of lobbying with CMS or with the major carriers to make sure that they understand the value. And at the end of the day, we've got to demonstrate through clinical evidence that this product does what they say it's going to do. But you point out a very good a good problem and something that we have to work with constantly in terms of advocacy. Just the whole point of HAIs, the healthcare associated infections. We sell this test for about $25 or $30. Its predecessor, a little petri dish that takes 3 days for an answer, sells for a couple of dollars. And plan C is to do nothing, which is free, so to speak, at the margin. But we have to convince the hospitals, not us. Fortunately, there are third parties out there who are looking at this, opinion leaders. It happened with healthcare worker safety. It's happening in HAIs. People unrelated to BD are looking at this and saying, wait a minute, if you do these screenings, we can lower infection rates. When you have an organism that has a 25 to 30% mortality rate, MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, 35% mortality rate, and healthcare-associated infections costing hospitals anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 per. The question of whether I should do a $25 test to see if I've got somebody with this bug becomes more self-evident than what you were talking about. But it is an issue. There's another one back here.
Just given a book called Wikinomics, and it talks about collaboration with customers and competitors as a way of innovating. And I was wondering how much of your innovation comes from that kind of collaboration.
You have to be listening to the voice of the customer. But you have to do it in a unique way because, if you go back, I'll date myself, 40 or 50 years, to the pre-xerography days. There weren't many people running around saying, geez, we need a plain paper copier. So sometimes the answer does come before the question. And sometimes the supply does create its own demand. So you've got to be careful about what you ask customers, because they sometimes don't know what they need, in one sense. At the margin, they very much know what they need. They very much know what their day-to-day problems are. This is why we embed in customers. Some of our R&D people will go out and spend days, just watching stuff in a lab. Why did you do that? How come? What happens next? Asking all the dumb sort of Columbo kind of questions that leads to some insights. So I think it's not a mistake that we're not in lots of different places in healthcare. We're not in orthopedics. We're not in cardiovascular. I think you have to be very deep and rich and sort of intimate with your customer needs in order to get this done right. And we do collaborate with not necessarily competitors, but with other inventors. The medical technology industry that I serve, 80% of our members of our trade association have less than 50 associates and revenues less than $100 million. So it's populated by a lot of small companies. I talked to a fellow here this morning. He's got one product, but it's going to make a big difference in the area that he's applying it. And so that's another way to collaborate. A lot of these ideas are coming out of labs, doctors' offices, universities, and so you got to go find them. Yes?
You spoke very briefly about the interaction with your customers online, the 10,000 catalog and
Right.
100,000 customers. Could you just expand on that a bit?
If you wanted to do a tutorial on internet CRM, we probably wouldn't be at the top of your list. There are probably other folks out there doing a lot, Amazon's and you order a book from Amazon or now Barnes & Noble, and within, next time a book like that comes out, you get a little note. Well, we do the same thing. It's not vastly different. We have our catalog online. We have materials online. We have an increasing database of customers. And if they opt in to our relationship, then we know by what they're looking at. So this neuron system actually has a cumulative knowledge system built into it, so that we know if scientist Smith is always looking at this particular scientific problem, if they keep logging on to that part of our database, if they keep dying, we know that if we're sponsoring a symposium on that particular topic, we'll go out and find all of the people who've expressed an interest in that. So it's more than just exchanging, an order and ship a product, ship a product. As we do that, because of the nature of that business, which is deeply, these are PhDs talking to PhDs. This is not, buying nuts and bolts in a hardware store. These are, the folks we have on our side are PhDs talking to other PhDs and interfacing through customer service and also through the web. So it's more than just exchanging data, exchanging transactions. We learn from the transactions and move in and go out from there. We haven't brought that level of sophistication to other parts of our business, which tend to be more, send me a truckload of syringes to the Nebraska Medical Center, that kind of stuff. But even there, you can learn about that demand pattern and be there almost before they even know they need it. The product showing up on their door.
Can you give us your opinion on stem cell research and what the future of that might look like?
I think it's a powerful tool. BD is involved almost exclusively in adult stem cells. We have worked, again, we are a tools company, so we are not directly involved in developing therapeutics, but if you look at the cell sorter by its name, cell analyzer, people are using this to interrogate and understand cells, both from a clinical point of view. You will take cells out of your body and through a blood collection and interrogate them and see if you've got lymphoma or leukemia, for example. Or if you're HIV positive, we will be able to tell if your CD4 count has reached a certain level that suggests you could be an antiretroviral candidate. And they're also used by researchers. So I think it would be inappropriate for me to opine on the scientific future of this, because I'm just not credentialed to do that. I can tell you that there's a lot of work going on in this area, and it involves both the adult cells, which are circulating, and many of the things that we have done in trying to, again, one of the holy grails for people with diabetes is to be able to replace the islet cells that are insulin producing, and through the immune response, the islet cells have been destroyed through an autoimmune mechanism that we still don't completely understand. So I believe that at some point in the future, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years or 15 years, I believe that some variation of stem cells can be used to to solve that problem.
We all know the answers in the data somewhere. I'm just trying to narrow it down.
Well, I think if the question is how do you minimize your innovation risk, we actually have two kinds of debates going on in the company. One is should we be minimizing our risk, and there's another group in the company which is good that says maybe we should be taking more risk. I think you minimize your risk by, I think, strategy, if you have it clearly defined but sufficiently broad. So if I were to say, BD is in the syringe business, or we're in the petri dish business, or we're in the flow cytometer business, that would be a dangerous way to define the company. But if I said we're in the business of making parenteral drug delivery as effective wherever it's needed, and we're in the business of making diagnostics fast and easy and effective for therapy, and we're in the business of making researchers more productive as they study cells, that will bring you to certain places, but it'll also preclude you. So I think your strategy, as much as it's telling you where to go to look, it might also tell you where not to go. And so as we think about a new product or a new technology or an acquisition, we do send it through a filter of, is this something that, does this meet our paradigm of, we adopt and adapt technology to answer unmet, significant problems. We use our manufacturing skill to make it available, and then we surround it with service and support in the areas of parenteral drug delivery, diagnostics, and life science research. That's a big mouthful, but it also is a helpful definition. So I think one of the ways you limit your research, your risk, is to stick to your knitting. Now, of course, if you stick to your knitting too much, you don't grow. So the good news in medical technology, unlike pharmaceuticals, is that we can do feasibility studies at a fairly low cost. We can take something, like nanoparticles and see if they apply to drug delivery or diagnostics, and we can run experiments at a fairly low cost to say, hey, you know what, it's probably going to work before engaging in big clinical evaluation and big clinical development. So if you start small and limit your experiments and also have very strong criteria for getting to the next step. So we have a phase gate. You have to go through each milestone. If you don't make your milestone, you don't get the next increment of money. So that tends to limit that, and follow your strategy and stick to your knitting. Thank you all very much.